Welcome back to Autism for Badass Moms. I'm your host, Rashida, and today we have an amazing guest. Amazing. I'm so excited. We have Dr. Divina Lopez, who is a pediatrician it's been a decade that she's been a pediatrician, parent coach, and also a school doctor.
Yes.
And Dr. Divina, has been featured in, she's esteemed, okay? She's been featured in Univision. She knows, just a mass. She was named New Jersey Doc, best New Jersey Doc, and Forbes Health as well. Forbes Health she was in. So you had to have seen her somewhere because she's everywhere.
Thank you.
But her most profound job that she loves is being a mother to a 7-year-old son who has a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And she is just doing the thing. She's doing the thing. She's providing knowledge about autism. She's helping special needs parents in parenting. Mm-hmm. And also she's, let's just talk to her because I can go on for days. So welcome, Dr. Lopez.
Thank you, Rashida. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. I love your energy already.
Yes, we're doing that energy thing.
Yes, we are. We are major focused on that. But thank you for providing a beautiful space for this podcast.
Yes.
I think, I would really love to just jump right into it because there's so much information that we have to share with all the badass moms out there that are doing it every day.
Every day.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about your son who is 7 now.
He's 11.
He's 11 now.
Yes.
Oh, I'm making him a 7-year-old.
I'm happy we're at 11. Yeah.
And so he's 11. So take me back to when you got the diagnosis, because I know he got the ADHD before.
So he got diagnosed at 7. Maybe that's what's sticking in your head. Yeah.
That's
it. So my son actually is a late diagnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we went on a journey with him of, obviously as a pediatrician, I paid attention to all of these signs, right? That I noticed early on. But because he was a child who mostly fell within the milestone curves for all the different milestones, from speech to language to, fine motor, gross motor, all of that. He was basically kind of within that range throughout his first year.
Okay.
And it wasn't until the second year that I started noticing some of the stereotypies and stuff like that, right? So he was very verbal and actually above average in that area. And not an echolalia kind of thing. He was just very good at memorizing everything, right? Mm-hmm. So anything he heard, he was he grasped it. And he was people would be amazed by him because he would just memorize everything. So he knew all the planets. He knew all the dinosaurs. He was one of those kids, right? Which is considered to be more, if we still had that diagnosis, an Asperger's type of diagnosis. But then he had some other things where he started to really become delayed. And it was more in the fine motor. Some of it was he had issues with coordination, with balance, with stuff like that. And then he really started with the repetitive movements all the time, right?
Okay.
So me, as a pediatrician, I was working a lot. Mm-hmm. I just became a single mom at that time. Okay. So I wasn't home as much as I would have, liked to be. And when I was home with him, I'm noticing all of these things. I'm how come nobody else is pointing these things out, right? And I remember bringing it up to my mom and this is not normal. Or even talking to his dad at that time, I think that he may have autism. And everybody would be you're crazy.
Oh, I know about that.
Yeah, you're crazy. He's a genius. Don't say that about your child. And I'm there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just pointing out the concerns that I'm having, right?
The behaviors that you're seeing.
Yeah. And even when I went with him to his pediatrician, I would be listen, this kid doesn't sleep at all. the eating is a challenge. It always was a challenge. Actually, that was probably one of the first signs for us. Yeah, he was always on the like 5th percentile for like weight and height. Like he never really ate too much. He didn't ever really feed himself. Like that was a huge challenge for us, right? But I just always thought, okay, that's just feeding stuff, whatever. And then eventually, like when he entered into preschool, that's when, things really became challenging because, they're not going to feed your child in preschool. They're not going to do all those extra steps. And he wasn't keeping up with his peers, right? But he also had some behaviors that were concerning. And I feel like, they labeled him as the little bad boy in the classroom and stuff like that, right?
Now, when you took him to his pediatrician, was the pediatrician on board with that? Like, yeah, this is probably autism.
No. No. And that was very frustrating for me, right? Because again, like this is my area of expertise. It's his as well. And I had a very good relation, and I still do. I have a great relationship with my son's pediatrician. We still go to the same pediatrician. But I would be like, I see this and this and this and this and this. And he was like, yeah, but let's just watch and wait, And a lot of pediatricians choose to watch and wait. I'm not one of those. I'm like, let's just get the services
take action
started.
Now. Yeah,
because the sooner we get it started, the better off I know they're going to be, right? And when they're young and their brains are just like capturing everything, that's the time. That's the time that you really want to do it. So I just actually I went myself to the hospital and I got an occupational therapy evaluation done. And they started giving him some services at the hospital. But I would literally have to pick him up from school, take him to the hospital, bring him back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was, I don't even know how I did it back in those days. Like I was lucky to have my mom sometimes.
Yeah, and having a career as well.
Yeah. So it was really hard to balance it all. And then eventually he was having really when he got into elementary school, first grade was really where, things get a little more challenging in first grade. So the teacher brought it up, he has focus issues and I wasn't on board with really thinking it was ADHD because I saw everything, right? They're seeing the school stuff and what their concerns are at school. But we ended up doing a neurology referral.
Okay.
Yeah. And the neurologist was like, oh, it's executive functioning issues. Let's just start some supplements. We did that. It really wasn't working. I was like, one day we're there with our follow-up visit. And this was during the pandemic, actually. So it was a virtual visit. And I said, just give me your honest opinion. You don't think that he's on the spectrum? And he's like, of course he's on the spectrum. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why aren't you saying anything to me? And he's like, well, because he's so mild. And I said, but that's restricting him from getting the services and help that he could be getting at school.
Absolutely.
Why would we do that? Why would we do that? So he agreed. And then he actually diagnosed it. And then we went to a developmentalist. The developmentalist was like, let's watch and wait. He's just quirky. We're not really sure.
So you were met with some roadblocks.
Yeah.
And again, you're a doctor.
Yeah.
In the field.
Yeah. So, I encourage any parent who has that feeling, you're the one that's with your child all the time. Don't worry about what the experts or the professionals are saying, right? If they're not taking you seriously, then get a second, third opinion if you have to.
Because you know your child.
Right. You're the one that's with them. You see it, right? Capture things on video because sometimes kids go to the office and they're the best behaved. Yeah, because they're afraid, right? They're afraid of what's actually happening. They don't want to get a shot.
Different setting.
It's completely different. They act different. So you sometimes, you're saying things and the doctor's like, oh, but they're fine, So if in your heart of hearts you feel like there's something that needs to be addressed, then keep searching for the right practitioner, keep bringing it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't ignore it. It's your child. So we did get a late diagnosis. But I'm happy because he started getting more services, right? We tried out like ABA therapy.
Okay.
And I think he's doing fantastic. Like I can't complain. He's really doing well, but it's a lot of us really constantly like coaching him too,
Okay.
right? So I think, as parents, that's part of our job. Like we need to like coach our children and help them figure out the neurotypical world.
Right. And so, he's 11.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of like socializing with your
Yes.
peers.
Yes.
How is he with that?
Oh my goodness. So he transitioned into a new school this year. And ever since we've transitioned into the new school, like these kids are, I don't know if they're curious about him or what, because he's not in an integrated classroom anymore. He's in a general classroom setting. It's a much smaller school. So I think like everybody's kind of, it has more of a family feel.
So it's like the new person coming in, you're like, who is this?
And they're so cool with him. Like my son was like, I'll just give it the first year. I don't know if I'm going to make any friends, because he's used to not really having friends. Oh. Yeah, he's like, I know people think I'm weird. I see how they look at me, because he still does a lot of his like movements. He's going to do what he has to do, and that's good. You have to regulate yourself. That's okay. If people look at you, they're going to look. What are you going to do, right? So he would like try to do it during recess and stuff like that. At the school, I did ask them, like, please help him socialize with the other kids during recess, because I know he wants to, but he doesn't really know how to.
Start that engagement. Yeah.
Just push him a little bit in the right direction. And they did. And he's been so happy, because there's like a little boy group, and he's like, they call him the wolf gang. And he's like, I'm in the wolf gang now. And so, they're like super cool with him. They do the handshakes and all of that. And he feels accepted by them. And he doesn't feel ashamed of himself, or like they're not accepting him. He has like a whole different experience at this school, which is helping him feel, I think he just feels so much better. Yeah.
And I think about when we look at children who are mild or can assimilate, we don't realize, again, that there's other things, behaviors that happen, and also masking.
A lot of masking.
And that is, a struggle. Just think about like having to, go into a situation where you feel different, and so you're trying to make other people see a whole different you and be like them and mimic their behaviors. Yeah. Did your son go through that at all?
I think he goes through that all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I think he's good at figuring out like what's the vibe of this place. He's very good at that. He's very observant whenever he goes into a space. And he can pick up on whether, like, is it okay for me to be myself here? Or do I need to, like, look a certain way and mask more, right?
Right.
I try to, like, pay attention to that, because I don't want him to learn how to mask so much. But I know he's done it. He's great at it, actually.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel bad for him. So I know he does it to protect himself, right? That's, like, definitely a protective thing. And I know I've done it for so long, right? I'm neurodivergent. I've talked about that. I know how painful that feels when you feel like people are not going to like me for me, right? And so I don't want him to, like, make that a habit, but I understand that he has to use it sometimes, right? And so I'm sure that at school it happens a whole lot, right? With crushes or stuff like that. Like, I want that person to like me, so I'm going to do this and this and this. And, that's the age that he's in, right? Like, he's exploring that stuff.
Yeah, like, who's doing what and what's the next thing. And, thank you for disclosing, again, being neurodivergent. And, like, the process and how he feels.
Yeah, it feels really stressful.
Yeah.
It feels stressful when you go into spaces where you're like, what's going to happen here? Is it okay for me to be my true self? Or, do I need to be this persona that people expect because this is what's socially acceptable? And that's where I think like we could do so much better as a society.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. We could go on and on about like society and what needs to change.
Yeah.
I did want to get into the topic, because we're talking about overcoming, the negative thinking.
The negative thoughts.
So
Yeah.
tell me about the negative thoughts, your experience with that.
Yeah. I think, we all
Everybody.
get into our heads, right? We like live in our heads so much. And especially as moms, we feel that guilt, that fear,
Yes.
shame sometimes, right? And the sadness, the anger, everything that comes along with it, right?
I think we every emotion we feel.
Yeah. Sometimes though, we don't even realize when we're doing it. It becomes like such a loop in our head that we think that this is like a normal thing going on. And I think like we really need to pay attention when this is happening because we're going down the rabbit hole and that's not going to serve us or our kids in any way, right?
Can you give us an example of a time where that was your experience?
I probably had that the most when I kept wondering, like, why am I seeing certain things and nobody else, especially my own colleagues, are not validating it, right?
Yeah.
My own colleagues, my own family, like, why is everyone telling me that I'm wrong here when I just want to help my son out and nobody seems to be on board with this? I even questioned my own, like, medical education. I was like, am I a bad pediatrician?
And that's like going down that rabbit hole.
Constantly. I even felt self-conscious at work because I was like, am I seeing this in other kids now? Am I overdiagnosed? Because someone even like accused me of like, oh, you're overdiagnosing it because look at you, you're even doing it to your son. You see him as a patient.
Ooh, I've been through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would I want to do that to my son? It questioned, like I questioned myself in every single way. I was just like, am I really a professional? What am I thinking? All these other colleagues are not, on the same page as I am. I must be wrong about this. I'm a bad mom. I constantly had to go back to myself and just wonder, like, what was I really doing?
What emotional state was that putting you through? Just the constant questioning, of what you're just, what you were doing for your son.
Yeah. It made me feel like very self-conscious of myself, right? Like, I think I picked myself apart so badly because I just questioned almost everything. I questioned everything. Like, why am I always looking at these things? How come I pay attention to all of this so much? Is it just my anxiety, right? Because I even went through a time where I was like, is it just like part of postpartum depression or something like that? Like, is it
right.
all of that, right? So I wondered a lot about my mental health, and I remember never ever thinking like I need to go see a therapist or I need to talk about these things with somebody else because I just kept everything to myself. Again, it's that mask, right?
Absolutely.
So I probably masked the most during that time because I wanted to keep up the appearance of like going through a divorce, right? So that was another thing. It was like, it was a failed marriage. It was, having to transition now with co-parenting,
right.
sharing my son with his dad in a whole different environment and what was going on. Having my family in my house to help me take care of my son, so it felt like all eyes on me all the time. So I was like very judgmental of myself, like super critical.
And again, that was all sitting just with you.
Yeah.
And all the thoughts that you just had said that you were thinking, it sounds so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So overwhelming.
It felt very stressful and I wasn't aware of it. And that's why, I always say like the first thing is like become aware of it because I didn't realize what I was doing to myself. I was like constantly beating myself up. Right? Like constantly in this like spiral of terrible negative thoughts while trying to keep up the pretense of like, yeah, I'm Dr. Lopez, and you know, I'm showing up to work every day, and you know, everything is good, and you know, and even for my son, right? Because you don't want your children to see you sad or going through something. You try to stay strong for them.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so, you know, you never feel like you can really express it. It's like a hidden secret, and you're like, this is my secret, and I'm going to lock it away, and only I know about it.
And we were talking before the show about that, and I said that most battles that we have is not like, you know, on some battlefield. It's in our heads.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and it's, I call it suffering in silence.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Suffering in silence. No one knows but you know, and it's a secret.
Yeah.
And again, there's a committee in our head that will tell us everything that's going to support the negative thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks for all the evidence.
All the
evidence. It's like the best detective in the world. It's like, this is, I'm the best detective. I'm going to show you why everything I'm saying to you is true. Right?
Yeah.
And so then we believe all of this, and we're like, it has to be true. Look, you know, this doctor told me no, and that one told me no, and my mom told me no, and you know, yeah. So you will find every piece of evidence that supports what it says, right? What it's telling you, and you're like, this has to be true. This has to be what's going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we just hide that little secret, and we don't tell anybody, and we cry in the shower or on drives home before you get, you know, home. You don't sleep at night because it needs a space to get you too, right?
And it's usually at nighttime when we're still
it's at night.
That it's like a stalker, like, you know, like, oh, it's quiet, it's dark, let's just
I got you now,
like, get her now, and now she's not gonna sleep.
Yeah. And so then, you know, you probably have a child who's going to wake you up a few times. And then you have these thoughts that keep you up at night, and you're like totally sleep deprived, and it just becomes worse because of that.
Right. I think about like autism moms. You were talking about the various emotions that we go through and the feeling of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And how if you create that negative space in your head, it could possibly move towards depression.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it can move towards depression. And you were on it with the diagnosis, was there ever a part of you that felt another emotion, like maybe sadness or frustration or
all
guilt?
of them?
Yeah.
All of them, yeah. I felt it constantly. I was frustrated because I'm like, when we go to these visits, what's going on, that they're not understanding what I'm seeing with my son, or, you know, not even taking into account that this is what I do, and why would I want to like make up a story, right? I felt guilty because I wasn't home as much as I wanted to be, right? And I was like, I want to help him better. I don't know how to help him better. I'm trying my best, but I'm getting all this pushback. I really thought like, you know, what am I doing as a mom? Am I really present for my kid? It also felt really hard, right? Yeah. Everything felt hard because the teachers would constantly give us like bad news about what happened that day. Sometimes I would just want to be like, F all of this, because, you know, you don't even know where to like go. I was constantly sad. Because my marriage was apart. My co-parent wasn't on board. Like it was really hard. It was really hard. But I'm going to tell you what I'm good at. And this is what probably many of us are good at, is like suppressing it all.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing through. You got to show up.
And I think about, again, everything that you went through, again, you know, a divorce and parenting styles. So you had a fight with that.
Yeah.
And then you have a fight with, you know, the school and maybe sometimes of services or what they're thinking and what you're seeing. And then you got your pediatrician who's just like, well, you know,
it's very laid back.
You know, grow out of it, you know.
He's fine.
And then maybe sometimes family who is just like, I don't see nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I don't see nothing wrong.
They're like, you have a genius. And I'm like, listen, I love that he's and I think that's another part that people don't get, right? Like, it doesn't always mean that intelligence is an issue here, right? many people with autism have above average intelligence. These are like the most brilliant people
Absolutely.
that we know in the world, right? So when people hear the word autism, they just jump to like, oh, but he's so smart. And that has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it. But I want to make sure that we are providing everything that we can to help this person grow into the person that they are meant to be. And that's the piece that I think people don't understand. Like, they get caught up in a diagnosis and what does this sound like? What does this mean for our family? You know, did other people in our family have this? Are you trying to say that X, Y, and Z maybe had something like that?
Your great. There was always something wrong with him.
Oh, you know that uncle? He was a little strange.
He would say to himself a little bit. I don't even know if he talked ever.
Right.
Yeah, we start grasping at they start grasping at straws and things of that sort.
Well, people always internalize stuff, right? So it's like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for us? What does this mean for the family? And coming from a Latino culture where like we are so much about the family, oh my goodness, they feel like they take it very personal. Yeah, what's the reflection of this on us?
Yeah, and could you talk more about that? Because then culture also plays a part.
A huge part of it. and I'm sad to say that because it does, there's a big denial factor there. Yeah. Right? Because you don't want to say anything negative about somebody, right? This is your family member. You want to love them, encourage them, and support them in every single way. Yes. But loving them and encouraging them and supporting them means getting the right help for them, right? Getting the right support for them. You want to make sure that you're there for them in that way. Culturally, you will get a lot of pushback because your grandmother's going to tell you something, your mom is going to be in there, and it's all these opinions, right? And they're just opinions, right? Yeah. Sometimes I would be like, and I get it, like my parents don't see me as a doctor, they just see me as their daughter, so they're like, yeah, but this is what we see, and he's fine, and he's fine, and he's fine, and I'm like, all right, he's not the example of maybe the severe type that you've seen. And, and you've heard this a million times. Every kid with autism is different, right? Yeah. But I'm like, yeah, but in the ways where he is having a deficit or he needs some support, let's make sure that he's getting it. The other thing is like getting accused of being helicopter mom. Oh, you're so on top of him. Stop babying him. Yeah. He's totally fine. You gotta stop doing this. You're the cause of this. And if you think about it, when autism like first really started getting more of like a diagnosis way back in the day, I'm talking about, those moms were called refrigerator moms. They were considered cold, and this is why those kids turned out like that, right? We're the ones that get blamed. We are the ones that hear everything, and that's the reason why we believe this stuff and we talk negatively to ourselves because we're like, we caused this. What did I do wrong during my pregnancy? You start going all the way back.
Yeah, I would say it's like weeds, right? If you don't pull your little garden, if you don't pull that one weed out, it is gonna like grow
and take over everything.
And again, it starts with that hearing that diagnosis. Yeah. And then it's the spiral of like, well, it had to be me. Yeah. It had to be me. Yeah. And for me, my repetitive negative thought that I'm working on is that feeling like a bad mom. Yeah. Am I doing enough? Yeah. Could I be doing more? Yeah. I'm at work, hustling. Yeah. Maybe I should be home, or maybe my son would have progressed further if I just all of the areas that I go into. Yeah. And I would say like in the beginning, it was harder to get out of it. I would get like very depressed and I get anxious and, hopeless and all that. Yeah. And as time went on, I was able to develop some skills to be like, well, maybe it just is what it is. I mean, my child is going to thrive in the way that they're supposed to. Yeah. And that's that. And stop comparing, because that was me. Like,
the comparison game. That's another one. Yeah. That's a huge one. Yeah, I know. So I think, we all go through those different stages of grief, right? And then hopefully you get to like the acceptance part. But we go through all of those different phases because we just are searching for like what is the best way we could help our kid, right? That's our main focus. We put ourselves to the side and we focus like blinders on our child, and we're always afraid that we're not doing enough. And we hear this constantly in society that we're not doing enough, especially if we are, you know, working outside of the home, and, you know, oh, you're not there as much. And, you know, there's just so much. There's IEP meetings that feel like you want to pull your hair out.
I feel like I went to law school already.
Right.
Like, seriously.
Yes, I know. I'm with you on that one. And the thing is that you don't know what you don't know. Right? So you have to like research so much, and you got to keep pushing, and you got to be on top of them, and you constantly have to be like, did we meet this goal? Did we not meet this goal? Like, what does this goal really mean? Right? Because the language is totally different.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we are so badass. Like everything that you just said that we go through, and there's like it's like layered. Yeah. That's what makes us truly, I mean, the epitome of strength, resilience, fierceness. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, I'm a work in progress. You're a work in progress.
We all are.
We all have some kind of story that we tell ourselves. And again, like you said, looking in the universe for what's going to co-sign that check.
Yeah.
Right? And I wanted to get into when you were starting to talk about like how we moms put ourselves like on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I love to talk about like badass self-care. What does yours look like?
I think I have different forms of it. Depends on what my mood is. But, you know, sometimes that's just me sitting down and journaling. Like, is this thought that I'm really telling myself true? And doing like a thought record. Okay. Right? Where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling sad today. Is what I'm telling myself really true? Is that story real? Or am I making it worse? Am I catastrophizing this, right?
Would you say there's power in writing it down?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And talking to your friends about it, you know, a trusted friend. You can't just like talk about these things to just anybody, right? Especially if they don't relate, they don't get it. They want to soothe you and say, oh, everything's gonna be okay. And that doesn't make us feel better, right? We're really strong, but I'm tired of being strong, you know. So it's important to be able to like put it on paper or verbalize it. I love to put it on paper and burn it. You know, that's just a practice that I have. And again, like according to the way I'm feeling, sometimes I just need real alone time where I'm not engaging with people, where I just get to do whatever it is that I love to do, reading my books, taking a bath. And a lot of times what it means for me is like going out into nature because I need to ground myself, right? Because when we're constantly in our heads, we're just like, it's very airy and we need to ground ourselves.
No, listen, I love that you said nature because I think certain self-care strategies may work for some and not others. Yeah. So you were talking about nature, and I'm imagining the beauty in nature.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, bugs, and like, you know, like that wouldn't work for me.
Right.
You know, so definitely, you know, whatever is going to soothe you, and it doesn't have to look like other people's.
Yeah. I tell people like have a toolkit, right? Know what are the things that work for you. What are the things that bring you joy, right? I love music. I love dancing. Sometimes I need a glass of wine and just to dance in my living room.
Now I hear you do salsa?
Yes. Yeah. I love dancing. I've been dancing since 3. Like, that's my thing. So, you know, sometimes you just need the right music to pick you up. Sometimes it's praise music. Sometimes, you know, whatever it is that day that I need, right? And that's why you need to know yourself and what are your needs, right? Because that's the part that we don't pay attention to. We pay attention so much to our child that we don't know what it is that we need. We don't know what it is that lights us up again. And
we forget.
We totally forget. We forget about ourselves. We just put ourselves to the side. And, you know, part of addressing all of these negative thoughts and bringing that joy back is knowing what it is that lights you up and brings you that joy so that you can make time for it, because we don't have the time, right? We're really busy. We're really
so busy.
Yeah. It's like, when am I going to have 10 minutes to myself to put on my favorite song that's going to get me back in the right energy and the right mood to
And
keep moving forward.
And I wanted to bring that up because there's a lot of moms out there who feel like really like how can I do that? How can I fit that in when I have to, to be in all the treatment and I have the phone calls and I have a relationship that may be a little rocky right now, and then I got other kids.
Yeah.
What is something you would tell them that struggle with that?
I think the biggest part of that is like really being present. Even if you're at therapy with your child, right? Like, you can take those few minutes and like just be present with yourself and tune into yourself, right? And have that conversation with yourself. And I think that we all have that little girl part of us, right? And just like be like, what do you need? And like I tell little Divina all the time. Sometimes I look at a picture of myself and what do you need today?
That's
because
beautiful.
Yeah, I think you're calling me. What are you saying? I don't know. I'm not sure, right? And when you are present with even just like the sounds in the room, or like get back in there, because we're here too much. We got to be here too.
Right.
It's like a constant practice that I do with my son, because my son constantly is in another world. And I always tell him like, Aaron, Earth to Aaron, come back over here. Because I know I could see it. You know how their eyes just wander off and they're constantly like in another world that they created. I'm sure they love it. They're
excited about it.
Yeah, they love it there. And I know he does it in class. His teachers tell me all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fully aware of all of this. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. We're trying to work on it. So it's less and less, right? But we do it too. We live here and we got to be here. And that's the reason why I think I love nature so much, because if you're on a hike or something, right, you kind of have to pay attention, because what rock is next or whatever, right? You have to pay attention about where you're putting your feet.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you become like very present in the moment. Working out is really good for that too. Like I've been doing boxing lately, and I'm like, oh, that's a great
boxing. We got a pediatrician doing boxing.
It's so good. Or like even just like going to the beach and hearing the waves, like, all of that stuff, it really helps you to get back into that present moment. And when you're present, then it's just a whole different thing. You're not up here. You're not telling yourself all those negative stories. And you have that moment to actually like really tune in.
Yeah. Because again, the anxiety lives in the future.
Yeah.
And so if you can just kind of focus on that here and now, what am I feeling in this moment?
Yeah.
Definitely grounding.
Yeah.
Definitely grounding.
Yeah.
I think about just all the different things that you brought up, again, with going to the beach, which I love that, the sound of the water, the sea, just all that. It's just like all my senses need to be activated.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I struggled with the thought of like I had to be a little lavish kind of, spa.
Yeah, we think it's a spa day.
Yeah. Or
getting our nails done or hair done. Because that's what you see on social media so much. Like, oh, that's what self-care looks like. And yeah, it could be that, right? But first of all, I think many of us don't even have the budgets for those things anymore, especially with the way the economy is right now. But you can create your own like serenity, right? You can put on a YouTube video and listen to an ocean wave. You don't have to even drive to the beach or take a flight to another country or whatever. I mean, that it's great if you can, but you have to have a toolbox. Like, I would encourage everybody to like create your own toolbox. What is in that toolbox? For me, it means a favorite song. For me, that means like get up and like move my body, because the energy needs to move too, right? It stays trapped in your body, doesn't feel good, and then we start having pains in our body. We get a lot of the neck pain, the upper shoulder pain, right? The back pain. We get heart palpitations. So you really need to tune into your body, because your body sometimes feels sick, and we go a long time not even noticing it. So like your breathing may be off, your heart is racing a lot. And, then we have all these other things that go along with it. The weight gain, the anxiety, the not sleeping, everything like really spirals out. And then on top of like having negative thoughts, then we have physical symptoms that go along with it. And that's really scary, right?
And then there's the, and your doctor, like the cortisol.
Oh, the cortisol is terrible for you. Yeah, it's terrible for you. So, it's good to have like some hormone knowledge too, because like, you want more of that cuddle hormone, right? So cuddle with your kids, or like sometimes I think when we get into those negative thoughts of what is the future going to be like for our kid? Because parents always ask me this question. What's the future of my child, right? And I'm like, I don't even know the future for my child. And I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you that. But, I could tell you how we can try to give them the best future possible, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like engage with your child in their special interests, because then you could see all the possibilities for them, right? They're like really good at certain things. And visualize them. When you get nervous about like what that future really looks like, visualize them doing the things that you think they're not going to be able to do.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, because then you're putting them in
that
energy. They feel that energy. Believe me, your children feed off of your energy.
Yes.
If you're sending them positive vibes and you're like, baby, I know you could do this, right? Then they're like, yeah, my mom is my best cheerleader. I can do this. Or I remind my son sometimes, like, remember when you couldn't even ride a bike or whatever? Then it's like, yeah. Oh, remember when your behaviors used to take over you and you couldn't control them, but now you have a tool and you can do it? And do the positive praise when you see them doing it on their own. Look, oh my goodness, remember when you couldn't do that? And, have the celebrations, because we get so caught up in the negative that we forget to celebrate.
And it could work for us too.
Yeah.
Right? Remember when, I was feeling so depressed and I felt like things were not going to change.
Yes.
But look at me now. I'm feeling more hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, like it's good every once in a while to like have that review, right? Have a review of yourself.
Check in.
Yeah. Look, I went through a bad period, but we're out of it. It feels good right now. Let me bask in it, right?
Yeah. And Dr. Lopez, you, again, are absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I know you do a lot, again, being a school doctor and, also being a parent coach. And listen, y'all, so we were talking before the show about astrology.
Yeah.
Astrology. And I know there's some people who, I don't believe in that. And then there's some people do. I was talking about my son, and I got 2 Leos, and I was just like, yep.
A lot of fire in the house.
Yeah. And so I know you were talking about moving in another direction.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing some pediatric astrology is what I'm calling it. And I think it's super interesting because I'm blending basically, having birth charts and having all this knowledge of your child, with their astrology, and then just blending it with pediatrics and helping parents to understand their child and relate to their children in a different way, how to communicate with your child in their style, right? And the best way to get through to them, or even emotionally, because, most people are familiar with the sun sign, right? Which is like easy if you look at what day that person was born, but there's so much more to it. So there are moon signs, which tell you about your emotions, right? We all process emotions in a different way, just like we were talking right now. And then, there are different things, like we have different planets in our birth charts also. And your Mercury sign actually is like the place where you can see like communication. So I think that this would be very helpful, especially like for autism, because our kids do communicate. We just have to know how to communicate with them, right? It may not be in that traditional sense, but there's a way to increase communication with them, and when you can relate and communicate, the frustration that they feel and the behaviors that sometimes you see that come out of that, right? It decreases when you can get to that place where they feel seen and heard.
Yeah. And I think, there's people out there who think about, when I think the newspaper still exists. I can't, right? It does, right?
You're so funny.
Yeah. But, a lot of people would, you go to the astrology, the zodiac signs, and people think, and people think that's all there is, right? Today, you're going to be hit with something powerful, But as you're explaining and breaking down things, there's more to it.
Oh, there's a whole lot more to it.
Yeah.
And, just knowing your birth chart and putting your child's together. And it's like, this is what the family looks like over here.
Right? Like, this makes sense.
Yeah. How do we, coexist in a healthy way? Where you're honoring everybody, right? Because everybody in the household has to be seen and heard. And that can be complicated when you have 4 kids,
Yeah.
right?
I need to know. Like, you cannot be in the room with this one, okay? This is not going to work out.
Yeah.
You're a trailblazer. You know that?
Thank you.
You're a trailblazer.
Thank you. So are you. So are you.
And I think it takes individuals, sometimes we think things have to be a certain way, medicine and scientific and things, but it is whatever works. Whatever is going to work, and not everything is for everybody.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And that's okay. That's totally okay. I personally don't like to fit into any boxes. I'm like, don't put me in any box. I'm the pediatrician who's going to do a whole lot of different things.
Right.
And I've always been like that in my career. I've done so many different things with my degree, which I'm happy that I figured that out, that I can use it because, I got bored at some point in private practice. It gets a little boring, although I love the families that I served. I love them dearly. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. But I'm like, there's so many other things I could do with this, right? And for me, it's always about, like, how do I serve the greater good? And that's where my thoughts come from. And that's always the way I want to approach this. Because I think when people tell me sometimes that they're not happy with their medical practitioners, that makes me really sad.
Yeah.
And I want to give them hope that, like, we're out there. We want to help you.
Yeah.
It's just, things have really changed in medicine, especially post-pandemic or since the pandemic. And I just want people to trust that there are a lot of really good practitioners out there.
Yeah.
And we might do things a little differently, and that's part of the beauty of medicine, right? That you can develop your own style, your art, right?
Yes.
It is an art, and listen, we are all different. You have to find the one that fits you. Be open to trying new things. It never hurts, right?
No, it never hurts to try. I mean, again, I always say, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah, it just doesn't work. Like, you know,
right.
I would say nobody died in this movie, you know, like everybody's still alive, right?
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about your parent coaching?
So my parent coaching right now, actually, what I've been doing is helping parents with, like, school support, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, so initially I started off as a parent coach for new and expecting parents because, I just didn't want us to, like, repeat these traumatic cycles.
Right.
And ever since I pivoted to, like, the special needs community, and because I am a school doctor, and having gone through these IEP processes, which are painful.
Yeah.
I just wanted other people to know how to go through this process without losing your mind. And so I started, like, just breaking the steps down, and,
That's wonderful.
This is how we go about it, and just supporting them in that space because it's confusing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially, again, for, a newly diagnosed, just not knowing, sometimes, the school doesn't always have our best interest at heart,
Right.
but knowing those laws.
Yeah.
Now, where can people find you?
Everyone can find me on my website. It's www.drdivinalopez.com. So just my name. My name is used for everything. That's my handle for everything. For Instagram, for YouTube. I kind of got off TikTok. I used to be there, but
we need you back on TikTok.
I can't be everywhere. But, I also do a lot of webinars. I do some speaking engagements. I love doing that stuff. I just love connecting with people.
And you have a podcast.
Yes. I have a podcast called Dancing into Parenthood.
I love that.
I love that too, because we shared a lot of, for Hispanic Heritage Month, we did, like, Latino families just sharing their stories because a lot of these parents already have adult children. So I wanted people to see, like, what does that journey look like, right? And what are the possibilities that are out there? Because so many kids do great. And I want to just, if this is the last thing that I say, I want you to have hope for your child, because the possibilities really are endless.
And again, we can pivot towards that.
Yeah.
What would you tell a mom out there? I always say a mom that may have, just got the diagnosis and those negative thoughts are just starting to creep in, or a mom who's just years later and still can't let go, or new negative thoughts are coming in. What would you tell them?
One, it's always going to be there, right? Give some space to your thoughts and your emotions because they're valid, right?
Yes.
But give it a space and put it away because we don't want these weeds to grow, right?
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge it, validate it. Yes, it's happening. You feel this way. Again, is it the true story, or can we change our story, right?
Yeah.
So, like, can we tell ourselves another story? Like, I am a really great mom, right? I am the mom that my kid really needs. I'm learning how to do this. I need to forgive myself again and again and again and again, because nobody has like some sort of like roadmap where you're going to do this right every single time, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be wins. There's going to be losses. That's okay, right? Find community, right? Like listening to the podcast so that you can get the other advice. Just normalize it because all of this is really normal for you to feel. It's not abnormal.
Yeah.
And, believe in yourself because this is a gift that was given to you. And sometimes it takes many, many years to like feel that way. But you're built for this.
Oh, I love that. You're built for this.
You're built for
You're
this.
built for this.
Yeah.
And so you've dropped so many gems. I can see it now dropping. But you dropped so many gems.
Thank you.
And again, that we beat ourselves up and just having a little bit more self-compassion, and that we're going to make mistakes, right? We're going to make mistakes, getting it out, not letting that sit with us, those negative thoughts, you creep in, because again, it could become something more than that.
Yeah.
And I think, and then just that they're doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like you're doing it. And I would say you get up every day, not knowing what your day is going to look like, or you may know what your day is going to look like, and it could be the same thing every day, but you still get up, right? You still get up sad, maybe angry, maybe frustrated, maybe feelings of guilt, but that's a true badass right there. That's a true badass. You're showing up.
You're not giving up. You're showing up. You're doing the best that you can, right? And I think that's the other piece that we have to understand, that we're doing the best that we can.
Yes.
We have to honor that part. We have to understand there's a learning curve to all of this, right? So when you first get diagnosed, you're like, what is going on? There's so many things.
Yeah.
And it takes a really long time to get services, unfortunately. And that's normal too.
And as you go along, you're gonna feel more confident, right? You're gonna, there's things that I'm like, oh, I wish I knew that before, but now I know. Yeah. Right. And so I just want to say, Dr. Lopez, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. I feel like we can be best friends in real life.
I know. No, seriously. Like, I came in here and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so good.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for this opportunity. And I just love what you do. Keep doing your thing because you're encouraging so many women.
I appreciate it.
And we need this space. And I love that you created it. And I think that, the world is your oyster, girl. Keep going for the major wins because you're going to reach them. I know it.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. And again, I so love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And again, I think the astrology is absolutely
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Watch
I'll
out.
come back and talk about that.
Yeah, we definitely need to. So I'm going to go, check on my kids and like what water, like what all these little signs. I'll be calling you. So again, thank you for being on the show. If you want to get in touch with Dr. Lopez, it's Dr. Divina Lopez on Instagram, Facebook. She got a podcast, Dancing on
into Parenthood.
I don't want to say Dancing on to Parenting.
I know. Dancing into Parenthood. I wanted to make it like, fun. Let's choreograph this whole thing for you.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely check that out. It's absolutely amazing. And so, again, you know what? Mindset is everything, right? And so change your thoughts, you change your reality.
Yes.
And again, on that note, stay fierce, stay determined, and stay courageous. We will see you next week. Bye. Thank you.